Hello, welcome to Classical Greek Latin. This is the Latin lesson number 8 for chapter 7 in your Wheelock book. My name is Josh and I am the teacher for this course. So let's jump in. Today we're talking about the third declension. And the important thing to note about the third declension here is they describe all of what I'm going to say here in this paragraph here. But basically, like we've talked about before, you can always tell which declension a noun or adjective comes from by looking at the genitive ending. And then that is also where you get the root is from the genitive singular, right? So there are 5 declensions in Latin. We've learned 2 so far. So we've learned the first declension, which is feminine, right? Ah, I, ah. And then we've learned the second declension, which is both masculine and, or it can be masculine or neutered, and that's us, I, o, right? Or I, o in the neutered. So let's take a look at the third declension here. So one thing to point out there also is first declension is always going to be feminine, marked with the ah, or the ah sound, the ah vowel. You have a couple of words like poeta, nauta, agricola that have the ah ending but are indeed masculine. Those are exceptions. We can maybe talk about that later. So first declension is feminine for sake of argument. Second declension is masculine or neutered. With the third declension, what we have here today, you can have a word feminine, masculine, feminine, or neutered in the third declension. All right. So, but let's take a look at the genitive singular ending, basically talk about the dictionary entry and why it is that way. Okay, so let me zoom in a little bit here. We will take our first word here, rex, regis. Okay, we probably see this a lot in English. It means king, right? But if you look at regis, that's the genitive singular, right? And drop the is, you have reg, which is the root of the word, right? So as you decline this, or as it is declined here for you, you have reg, with just adding the endings to that, right? So you have is in the genitive singular, e, dative singular, right? So to review, genitive is of, like of the king. Dative would be to or for the king. Accusative, regem. All right, that's the king as the direct object. And rege is going to be the king as the ablative. And that is your singular. All right, and then you have your plural endings here. Es, Okay, notice your genitive is a little different there. We're used to seeing orum or arum, right? Here you just have So that is your genitive plural of the kings, right? And reges, this would be your nominative subject plural. The kings are doing something, right? When you hear words in English that you hear the plural as, let's see here, as you see this sometimes as the plural when words get carried over into English. You usually see them from the second declension, right? With us versus I, like cactus versus cacti, cactus, cacti, singular versus plural. Anyway, I'm getting distracted here. But yeah, es, reges, that's nominative plural. That's your subject. The kings are doing something. Regum, of the kings. And now here, ibus, that is the dative, to or for the kings. Now we're used to seeing is here in the dative plural, right? Dative and ablative plural are always going to be the same. But note here in the third declension, it is ibus. And it is going to, all these endings are the same for all the genders, masculine, feminine, neutered. Okay, and then the neutered follows the same rule as the nominative and accusative always being the same. All right, but let's go here, finish this out real quick. So reges, again, the accusative plural is going to be, I shouldn't say again, the accusative plural in the third declension is going to be the same as the nominative plural, right? So ace, ace. This is masculine. We have a feminine up here, but it's ace, 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 ace. Now the neutered is a little different. We have ah, right? That's a carryover from the second declension, marking the neutered plural. Okay. So, yeah. All right. So that is basically your endings, and then this is really what is in. This is what you're memorizing essentially. The endings here. They put just the case endings without the words. They simplify it for you. All right. So memorize these, and I'll talk a little more in a few minutes about the best way to memorize, in my view, is to just decline words in these declensions. But let's go back to the nominative singular, right? So we have rex, regis, and they explain to you how you get the x there. They're adding an s to reg for the nominative, which gives you rex. This is a very good example, and this is very typical, though that's not always the reason. It's best just to memorize the dictionary entry, right? So let me write out what the dictionary entry would actually look like for rex real quick. Okay, so you're going to have, if you look this up in the dictionary, it's going to be rex, and then regis, and then they're going to mark it as masculine. Okay, and then we'll just say it does mean king. But that's what the dictionary entry. So you have your nominative first, nominative singular, and then your genitive singular, and then they tell you the gender of the word. Now, again, typically you could usually tell the gender of a noun just by looking at the ending, whether it's an a or an us or an right? Masculine, feminine, or neutered. With the third declension, it's important to memorize the gender with the word, because you cannot tell from the form what the gender is. All right, so let me write out virtus, just for example. So you have virtus, and then you have virtutis, and this is feminine. And it means, we get the word virtue from this, but it means basically, it means like strength, manliness, the idea of virtue, of goodness, right? Good character. But it comes from the Latin word viri, which means man. But here, okay, so my point at hand is virtus, virtutis. We have basically the same idea here, where the root of the word is virtut, right? So you go to the genitive form, drop the is, and the root of the word is virtut. Okay, so what happened here is they added an s to the t. The t is identical, as is the s, the sibilant. They're both behind the t, right? The s changes the t to an s, so you're left with, instead of virtut in the nominative singular, you're left with virtus. So you have the same evolution of sounds going on in virtus, virtutis, as you do in rex, regis, and you have is in the genitive singular, is in the genitive singular here. So the only way to know right now what gender these are is to look at the dictionary entry and just memorize that. All right, so pretty straightforward here. Let's go on. Everything in this chapter is pretty helpful. So let's read this next section here. I have page 495 marked. We are going to look at that in a second. It's a good teaching learning aid. It's basically the appendix. But let's read this next paragraph here. Since the third declension contains nouns of all three genders, memorizing gender as part of the vocabulary entry remains imperative. Nouns denoting human beings Nouns denoting human beings, however, are typically masculine or feminine according to sense. All right, so we're getting a little into the philosophy language here, which I like. So, for example, rex is king. It's masculine. A king is masculine. And then uxor is wife, and of course, a wife is always feminine. So wife is going to always be feminine. So uxor, uxoris is how the dictionary entry would be, right? So rex, regis, uxor, uxoris is feminine. So this is where we get to where you could sometimes guess, if you know the meaning of the word, what the gender of the word is. It would not make sense for a king to be feminine or for a wife to be masculine. And some language teachers, some grammarians will say that the gender of nouns is totally arbitrary and it serves only a grammatical function. So, if you look at, I can't remember the gender of these words, but a mountain or a tree or a sea or a river in Latin and Greek, Hebrew, ancient languages generally are going to ascribe genders to those nouns, those things, right? And it is my belief that it coincides with their philosophy of the archetype of masculine and feminine being poetically personified in nature. So there is a rhyme and a reason to why words are masculine and feminine. But for the time being, just memorize the gender when you learn these words, especially in the third declension, okay? All right, so let's take a look here at some words here. So we're looking at masculine, feminine, and neuter samples. All right, so including a large group of agent nouns, that is, for persons performing actions such as actor, one who acts, or amator, one who loves, those are going to be masculine. So this is a good example. This section right here talks about what I'm talking about. So you have the idea of the masculine being the active agent in things. So, and this is why nauta, for example, even though it's in a feminine form, is masculine, because typically sailors were men, right? In antiquity, when you didn't have radios, you didn't have GPS, you just had to sail with the winds, the stars, and the gods to guide you. Typically, yeah, all the sailors were men. So the noun nauta is masculine, even though it has a feminine form, right? And we could go and talk about how the sea was seen as, well, in Latin it's neutered, but how the sea was seen as feminine and whatnot, and that's probably why that profession was a nauta, that person was placed in the feminine. But I digress. Okay, so words that were they're acting actively, those are typically going to be masculine, right? So you have amor, amoris, a lover, one who loves, a lover, right? To talk about that, because in English we have the idea as a woman can be a lover also. In Greek, they take this a step further and they actually have an active and passive form of loving, one for the man, one for the woman. So in antiquity, this was a big deal. They had a deep philosophy on this. Labor, laboris, the laborer, the worker, the victor, victoris, the champion, the victor, right? Scriptor, scriptoris, and that sort of thing. These are going to be masculine words, right? Now, we'll go on to some feminine words. Now, you'll note here, we're going to look at virtus, virtutis, and also senectus, senectutis in detail, but these basically are diminutives, okay? A diminutive is a word that is derived from another word, right? So virtus means strength, kind of honor, virtue is our English word for this, right? Which is our connotation for virtue is accurate to this word. But it comes from the word vir. So men were seen as valiant in battle, strong, right? That was the Roman salute to a departing friend was be strong, right? Vale. So it's a diminutive. So virtus, we'll just call it virtue, is a diminutive, or we'll call it manliness, right? Manliness is a diminutive. It derives from man, right? So we have vir, man, and then we have manliness, which is here it's feminine, right? Man, like we talked about, the king is masculine, which makes sense. Uxor, Uxori's wife, is feminine, but vir would be masculine, but its diminutive manliness, right, is going to be feminine. So I like the analogy of Adam and Eve here. Adam is, you could say, the man, the masculine person, the agent, the actor there. But then God takes Eve from the rib of man and makes a feminine woman from Adam. So she is a diminutive of Adam. She derives her definition from Adam, right? So she is in English, the word woman actually just means female man, loosely speaking. That's what the word woman means. It just means a man, but in the diminutive sense, in the sense of kind of like Adam and Eve, is a good analogy to understand that. All right. So, with that being said, let me I'll do two things here. I'll write these words out, virtus, virtutus, virtutis, in their full form, so there's no confusion. And then senectus, and then senectutis, okay? So let me write these out real quick. So let me switch pens so this is a little darker, maybe a little easier for you to see. So we're going to have, okay, so I already did virtus, virtutis, okay? Let's see here. I'll go ahead and trace it with the pen so you can see it a little better. Okay, so there's virtus, it's nominative form, and then you have your genitive form, virtutis. And I'm just making the spelling clear for you. So virtus, okay, so this T here, that first T is the first T here, and then this S comes from this second T in the root of the word. So virtut is the actual root. You drop the genitive ending, and that gives you the root virtut. But then virtus is how it appears in the nominative form. Okay, so when they write it out like this, virtus, and then tutis as the dictionary entry, that is correct, but that's what it would look like if they had written it out in its full form, and rather than trying to save space, which is common in dictionaries, right? So just to clarify the spelling. I hope that helps. All right, so let's do that with senectus. So we have senectus, and then senectutis. Okay. I'm not really interested with the long marks. You can mark it long if you like, but I'm not really interested in that for Latin. Okay, so let's look this up in the dictionary. Now, I think I've mentioned this dictionary on my Instagram. So let's take a look at this word. So this is an excellent dictionary by Chambers Murray. It only has Latin to English, which I prefer. Having an English to Latin dictionary, which you have in the back of Wheelock, is handy sometimes when composing. But sometimes an English to Latin dictionary can trick you into thinking that Latin thinks like English, which is not really true. So the best way to be able to compose in Latin is just to read a lot of Latin. So having only a Latin to English dictionary is in itself a good teaching lesson. But let's look at senectus, right? So let's look this up, and this is another reason I really like, I'll show you here quickly why I really like this dictionary. All right, so we'll look up senectus. Okay, so here we go. All right. Okay, so senectus. Okay, now they're doing their dictionary entry a little different than Wheelock did it, right? So Wheelock has senectus and then he puts tutis for the genitive marker. This is more intuitive here. So you have senectus and then utis is the abbreviated genitive form, right? They tell you it's feminine. But what is great here, now we're talking about diminutives, right? So Eve was taken from Adam, you could say, is an analogy. That's she's a diminutive of Adam, right? But this comes from senex, right? So senectutis, senectus means old age, right? And then they go on with the dictionary here. So it means old age, which is an abstract idea, but it comes from senux. So let's slide over here to senux. And where am I at? Senux. Oh, excuse me, senex. Here we go. So this is what you call proper etymology. Okay. So senex also is a third declension word. So it's senex, and it comes from senis, right? So this is actually an adjective or noun, and it just means old, right? It doesn't mean old age, it just means old. So it is masculine, right? So it's going to be, so it being a noun or adjective is not going to let you know if it's the diminutive or not. Because it can be either, right? But here, a dictionary like Chambers Murray is good because it walks you through the etymology of where the word originally comes from, right? So if we look here, senex, senis, again, there's no other older form of this word. They give you some Greek equivalents, basically. But there's no older form of the word. They're giving you some etymology here on the evolution of Latin grammar. But my point is that as far as going back and finding the origin of a word, it doesn't go back further than this. This is where it stops, right? This is just an old genitive form, which we were not going to talk about here. So, senex, senis, that it means old. And then the diminutive of that, the abstracted form of that is going to be senectus, senectutis, which is old age. Okay, so that's feminine, and then senex, senis is masculine. So that's just more or less for fun. But let's go back to Wheelock here, and we will go on. But that's basically what's happening here if you look at these words under the feminine form. And then if you look at the neutered here, let's see here. So they give you a bunch of examples here. Now keep in mind here with the neutered, genus, generis, genus looks like the second declension, right? It's only until when you get to the genitive form that you realize this is third declension, right? And again, in the dictionary, they're going to tell you that this is neutered, right? So you have the us endings, genus, corpus, tempus, and so on. And then they're going to provide you the genitive forms, right? So this is just kind of giving you heads up of what to expect for neutered words in the third declension, and not to get them mixed up with the second declension, masculine, which is usi, o, o, right? Okay, then you have a, like mare, mare, maris, so you have the nominative form there, which is identical to the accusative form in the neutered, and then you have maris, genitive form, right? Animal, animalis, okay? Okay. All right, so let's take a look here. We'll go on noun adjective agreement. Now, I mentioned this a little earlier. This is really good practice, and I'm actually going to decline one of these sets with you. We'll do Rex Magnus, okay? So, basically, this is good practice. And all this is talking about is that now that we're into the third declension, which can be masculine, feminine, or neutered, when you match a noun, so a noun and an adjective, like the great king, for example, has to match in case, number, and gender, right? So we have Magnus Rex. So Magnus, this is second declension masculine, so it is nominative, singular, and masculine because it's matching as an adjective. Magnus means great or big. It's matching the nominative singular masculine noun here, rex. So the great king. And now here, this is where Latin begins to get interesting because the endings look totally different, right? So we don't have an us set up here with the adjective and the noun matching in their case ending, phonetically that is. They're matching in the case, number, and gender, but their phonetic form, us versus x, is different, right? And then you have the plural here. So you have, you have the genitive here, magni, of the great regis, right? Of the great king. All right, and so on. So then you have this here with the feminine, pax vera, true peace, right? So pax, pacis. Okay, so there's the genitive form. So note, they're giving you the dictionary form here, but expanded to account for the adjective and noun. So you have pax vera, nominative, singular, feminine, nominative, singular, feminine. And then you have the genitive form, which you would expect in a dictionary entry to come next. Pacis verae, of true peace, right? So genitive, singular, feminine, genitive, singular, feminine. Okay? Okay, so while, and so on, etc. While an adjective and noun must agree in number, gender, and case, the spelling of their endings will not necessarily be identical. We talked about that just now. As seen before, noun adjective pairs like agricola, bonus, right? And I mentioned that earlier also. Agricola is farmer, it's masculine, and if you'd forgotten that, you have bonus here to tell you that, but it has a feminine phonetic form, even though it is masculine, right? Because again, philosophically in the ancient world, and even in times until modern machinery, farmers, people that plowed the field were men because it was very physically taxing, right? Okay, onward we go. Let's go ahead and decline rex, magnus rex. All right. We will do that together. This will be a fun review. And then we'll take a look at page 495 too. All right. So we'll get our declension here. So we have nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and then ablative. I'm not going to do the vocative, okay? Because the vocative is always the same as the nominative, except in masculine second declension. But I'll review that also in a minute. Okay, so we're going to do singular, and then we're going to do the plural, okay? So let's do this. So we have Magnus, right? And let's see, do we want to do, let's do this just for a refresher. We'll go and do Magnus all the way through, and then we'll come through and add our noun king, okay? So we're going to do Magnus Rex. That's what we're going for, the great king. Okay, so we have nominative, singular, singular, and this is masculine. Okay, so we have Magni, Magno, Magnum, then Magno. Okay, and now let's do that with Rex. So here we have our genitive form, so that's our root, reg, right? Regis, of the king. And now we have regi, right? To or for the king. And we have regem. And then you have rege. Okay, so let's go on to the plural here. We'll do Magnus first. So we have magni in the plural, nominative plural. And then we have magnorum. You have magnis, magnos, magnis. All right, and now we have our root here, reg. Okay, but now we're going to go reges, regum. Now note, let me write my cases here just to be clear. They are going across as the same. So nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and then ablative. Okay, so now we have regibus, so ibus. And then let me do this ablative plural here because it is the same, regibus. Okay, and then we have reges. So the nominative and accusative in the plural and the third declension are going to match, right? Not so in the first and second declensions. So that is that, all right? So we'll say this is this is second declension, right? And this is third declension, third declension. So we can mix these as long as the case, it's a case, number, singular or plural, match, and then the gender has to match, right? So everything has to be masculine, right? So case, number, and then gender, right? Magnus rex, magni regis, and then magno regi, and you get the idea. All right, let's go to page 495 real quick in Wheelock, which is a very helpful tool. So you have here in our chapter, we have the third declension here. Let's go to page 495 real quick. And we're going to have all this put together in one place for good review. Okay, so here we go. So we're on page 495 right now. And this is a summary of forms, okay? All right, so we have here first declension. Let me do this. There we go. All right, so we have our first declension. You recognize that word, porta, portai. Okay, that's our feminine. Second declension is going to be our amicus, right? A friend. So we have, that's going to be masculine. And then masculine, and then we have our ER noun there, right? But then you get over here and we got another masculine, but then we have the neutered, right? So you have 4 examples of second declension, 3 for masculine and 1 for neutered, okay? Then you have your third declension over here, right? Now they give you just the masculine. You don't see a feminine example because the feminine and masculine in the third declension are going to be the same endings. That's why they don't give you a feminine sample for the third declension. All right. So, but there it is. You have the third declension in the masculine. And then, again, it's basically the same in the neutered also, as well as in the feminine. But they provide the neutered because the neutered is the same in the nominative and accusative for both the singular and the plural, right? So you have us, a, right? For corpus means body. Corpora, right? So that's the difference there. So in the masculine feminine, only in the plural is the nominative and accusative the same. Where it's different in the singular, as is typical of the neutered, it's the nominative and accusative is the same throughout. Okay? So that's why they provide both columns there. And then if you're curious, this is what we have coming up. I'm not going to talk about it today, but we have our third I stem nouns, and then we have our fourth and fifth declensions, but we'll get to that eventually. But that's on page 495, very helpful. But what I did with Magnus Rex and writing out that noun and adjective from the first and second declension, putting those together is very good practice. So let's go back to our chapter at hand. Okay. Back to page 56. All right. Now these 2 paragraphs here, we read the first one. These are very good paragraphs. I'm going to read this for you. So, all right, in this list of new words, you can see how essential it is to look at a noun's genitive ending, not the nominative. Okay, we talked about most of this already. In order to identify its declension, that is first, second, or third. Otherwise, for example, us nouns like corpus and tempus might easily be mistaken as second declension. Likewise, recall that a noun's base is best determined from its genitive form. This is especially true with third declension nouns whose nominatives frequently do not reveal the base, as with the chapter's paradigm nouns rex, regis, virtus, virtutis, homo, hominis, corpus, corporis. English derivatives can be helpful in remembering a noun's base, right? So iter, if you have an itinerary, that's what time your plane leaves, that's what time your plane lands, all right? It means journey, but it's not, the full word is not just iter, it's itiner, like itinerary, okay? So yeah, sometimes English derivatives will help you remember the root of a word, okay, in the memorization process. So, cordis, heart, cordial, custos, custodis, guard, custodian. Since the third declension contains nouns of all genders, it remains imperative that you memorize the gender as part of the entry. And then as you learn this list, practice declining noun, the same noun adjective pairs. Okay, we talked about that. I did a sample for you where you're so a new lover, right? Our song, and then the good wife. You'll see that two nouns in this list, mos and litera, have special idiomatic meaning in the plural. We've seen this before with animus, and it's something to note carefully. So just read the notes on your vocab as you go before. Wheelock writes excellent notes for his vocab, so make sure you read the whole entry and not just the first couple of words. Okay, and they give you some advice on reviewing and that sort of thing. Let's see here. Just as something fun. Caput, capitis, it means head, and in Latin they use that for the word for chapter or beginning. In Hebrew, the word for head is rosh. I think it's called Rosh Hashanah, means the Jewish New Year. It means literally the head of the year, right? In Greek, the word for head is kephale, but they do not typically use that word to mark beginning. Arche in Greek would mean beginning or like a chapter in that sense. But that's just there for fun. All right, let's go on here. Here's your vocabulary. So that's the lesson for today. But here is your vocabulary. Okay. If you have any questions about all this, put it in the comments below, and I will answer those as I am able. And let's take a look at the exercises, the homework. So we have on page 58, we have the exercitaciones, the exercises. So I recommend working through these, and if you subscribe to our Patreon page, the link for that is in the description below. It's $10 a month. We go over all these sentences in great detail. I provide the translation, and I explain the fun details for you. All right, so go ahead and work through those. Those are very good practice and just fun. And then you have your Sententiae Antiquae. Same idea, except these sentences are real live Latin from real text from antiquity, which makes it doubly fun. But yeah, work through those. It's good practice and it's fun. Starts to give you a sense of Roman philosophy, Roman worldview. And again, we cover all this on the Patreon supplement lesson. So if you're interested in having help with that, go ahead and click the link below in the description for the Patreon page, and that is $10 a month, and that will give you access to all the supplement lessons for all the Latin lessons hitherto posted, and all the Latin lessons that will follow this one. The exercises, the answers for the exercises, and Sententia Tinquae will be covered there on Patreon. But that is the lesson for today. Not to be a damper on things, but you can read this. I will not be providing the translation on Patreon for this extra stuff. The Rape of Lucretia here, a story from Roman antiquity. You can work through this if you like, and if there's enough demand for help with this part, I will consider adding that as an option on Patreon. So let me know if you would like help with this sort of translation at the end of the chapters, and I will probably, if there's enough demand for it, probably offer a tier for that on Patreon. But yeah, go ahead and work through that if you like, just for fun. And we'll flip the page here. Take a look here. You just have some more. Yeah, this is all just good stuff. Roman culture, Roman history, Roman myth, deciphering ancient text, ancient inscriptions here. Just fun stuff. So knock yourself out there. Etymology there at the bottom. That's the best. Knock yourself out with that if you so desire. There's our next lesson, Chapter 8, Lesson 9. That'll come 2 weeks from now. So the lesson for next week will actually be a Greek lesson, if you are so interested in learning Greek also. But I digress. So that is Latin Lesson 8 for Wheelock's Chapter 7, Third Declension. So I hope this lesson was helpful to you. And again, put your comments, questions in the comments below. Consider subscribing to our Patreon page, and you basically get twice the content, twice the teaching there. And I will see you next time. So have a good rest of your day. Thank you. Bye.